Well, David, it all comes down to this Chargers, Raiders, week 18, winner takes all, winner gets into the playoffs. It's going to be so exciting, but I'm definitely nervously excited for this one.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Droegemeier. And on today's show, we're going to be getting into a ton, including the Chargers one-game winner-take-all Raiders game coming up this weekend in Las Vegas. But if you don't already, make sure to go subscribe to the show on our new Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and to follow the show for free on all platforms, wherever you get your podcast from. But before we get into today's show, I also want to tell you guys that Daniel Popper, the one and only from The Athletic, is coming on the show tomorrow. So we're excited to preview this game in the Chargers season, just talk about everything that's gone on lately with him. Obviously, he always shows up and is great for us. But on today's show, we have to just start with the magnitude of the game coming up for the Chargers against the Vegas Raiders, right? One game, winner takes all. It doesn't get much more exciting than that. Obviously, if you're a Chargers fan, you're very nervous as well. And the Chargers have had some of these positions before, David, and most of the time it's ended up pretty good for them. So we'll talk about some of the historic situations that we remember very well of the Chargers needing a win in the final week of the season to get into the playoffs and how they fared. And then we'll get into what we always do after good games, at least, what went right and what went wrong, starting with what went wrong in second and third segments today. But David, we all know now that the Chargers game on Sunday night got flexed to Sunday Night Football. So not only is it a giant game, but the Chargers have a giant stage, including a quarterback who in his young career has played very, very well in the bright lights of prime time. And he'll get another one this Sunday. Won the last primetime game against the Raiders on Monday Night Football. Won the primetime game before that in the I was in game against the Raiders. And now have to do it one more time to not only make the playoffs, but also getting the double added bonus, David, of kicking the Raiders out of the playoffs as well.
Oh, man, that would be so sweet. And, I've been a Charger fan for a long time, and I still hate the Raiders. So that would be the absolute sweetest feeling in the world if the Chargers were able to go in there into Las Vegas, beat up on the Raiders, and kick them out of the playoffs and earn their ticket to the playoffs. And also, I think it's funny for Justin Herbert, a guy who shies away from the cameras at every opportunity, and he goes out there on prime time and routinely provides A1 entertainment. And he just goes out there and balls out every single time. I just think that's a little oxymoronic for Justin Herbert. But this is such a big game. And, this is what you want. This is what you live for if you're a football fan. You're looking for Chargers, Raiders, AFC, two of the old teams in the league going head-to-head for all the marbles for that ticket to the dance. It all comes down to Sunday Night Football, and man, I am excited.
Yeah, Justin Herbert hates the camera so much he was trying to run away from the camera in the stadium, right? You just see his 80-foot face up there trying to walk away and juke out the cameraman in that last game.
Justin, there's cameras everywhere. You're not going to be able to run.
Yeah, he wanted to keep the focus on the defense. I mean, good man. But I think the other thing about this, David, which is so underrated, is just the fact that you get a game to care about this late in the season. Because you look at these last couple of seasons, I mean, there was nothing about the last game last season that meant anything besides the fact that it was the Chiefs backups that the Chargers were playing. And I know a lot of Chargers fans
wanted to finish the season strong, right?
And I know there was Chargers fans that didn't want to finish the season strong. They didn't want to give Anthony Lynn a 4-game winning streak. I'm just talking about the Anthony Lynn part of it.
Oh, yeah.
They definitely hurt their draft pick. Didn't end up mattering with Rashawn Slater falling to them.
Thank you, Lord.
I think the thing is, though, is like the last two seasons, the last week of the season, you've had nothing to play for.
Right? Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I mean, it's just to be able to care about the game so, far into the season and have a chance to potentially care about it even after that, right? To have meaningful games in December and January is what you need as a football fan, especially when you have a quarterback so good and you have
That's what it's all about, man.
That the Chargers have.
All about. You finally have something to care about, something to be excited about. As a Chargers fan, we know it's been really tumultuous the last 10 years. It's just been up and down, kind of like this season. But the Chargers have that chance on Sunday night to be able to go to the playoffs. And then anything can happen.
Yeah, and the Chargers have some history with this. So the last game the Chargers had to win to get into the playoffs or to at least have a chance was 2014. They were 9-6 headed into the last game of the season. The Chiefs had already clinched a playoff spot at that point. And what did the Chargers do? They lost to Chase Daniel in some sort of poetic justice. Chase Daniel beat the Chargers 19-7. Philip Rivers had 2 interceptions. He was sacked 7 times, just to give everyone a flashback of what the offensive line used to be like. I mean, that
Really
was
bad,
yeah, I mean, sacked 7 times, 2 interceptions, 0 touchdowns. Terrible game. I remember it.
ugly.
It was
Yeah.
awful. But the year before that, the Chargers had a similar situation where Alex Smith was not playing in the final game of the season, and the Chargers had a game against Chase Daniel, and it still took a 10-point fourth quarter comeback to send it to overtime after Ryan Suckup, one of my favorite kickers of all time, missing a 41-yard field goal to really win the game for the Chiefs. So the Chargers got it done there. And then the other one that stands out the most to me is the 2008 season, because that was a
Oh yeah.
game that was most similar to this one, because the Chargers started off 4-8 that season. They end up winning the last 3 games of a season to set up a 1-game playoff basically against the Denver Broncos. And it was huge because the teams were going in opposite directions. The Chargers needed a ton of breaks leading up to that week just to even have a chance. But the Broncos lost the games they needed to, and the Chargers went in and smoked them 52-21 in that game, and
Woo.
just absolutely blew out the Broncos. And I mean, that was one of my favorite games. I mean, I remember that was appointment television at the time for Chargers fans, just being somewhere to watch that specific game.
Oh my God. I mean, that's when the Chargers, and in that era, that's
Yeah.
when that was one of the most exciting teams in the NFL every single year. You had Phillip Rivers, Antonio Gates, LaDainian Tomlinson, all the stars on defense, Sean Merriman. I mean, you name it, it didn't matter. The Chargers were absolutely stacked and they were
Yeah.
loaded that year. And that was just one of those games where you're like, yes, that's what it's supposed to look like. And that's how you want to really make your statement to get to the playoffs. Such a fun game for them to just wreck another AFC West opponent.
Well, in the last 2 times they needed a win to get into the postseason that they won, they ended up going in and winning the first playoff game as well, which is obviously
Yeah,
pretty nice as well. 2013, Melvin Ingram comes back from a torn ACL that he had that season pretty much.
crazy.
And they end up smoking the Bengals 27-10 and keeping, the Bengals playoff winning streak dead at that point. And then the Chargers in 2008 ended up going to beat the Colts in the first round of the playoffs. And I remember that game as well against Peyton Manning. So that was obviously one to remember too. But the Chargers, I mean, it doesn't get much bigger than this. You have so much riding on this game. And right now, I think the best news for the Chargers is that there was no new names put on the COVID list today,
Yes.
David, because I think that's the only thing that can dramatically change how you feel about this game. But I mean, is there a way to even be fully confident at this point in the week? Obviously, we'll see the injury report. We don't know about Corey Linsley and stuff like that, but like, how are you feeling about this game right now?
I'm feeling pretty good about this. I mean, coming off of this win where the Chargers knew that they had to win to kind of keep their season alive and keep their playoff hopes alive, and the way that they did it, and the fact that they got all of their main guys back. All their good offensive weapons, all of their offensive linemen, their deep, their big defenders. They get Derwin James back healthy. He's all over the football field. You got Joey Bosa back there doing his thing. You got your corners, Michael Davis, Asante Samuel Jr. out there. I think because of that and the fact that there's really at this point, there's only one guy that hasn't really been affected with what's been going on. And I'm not really going to say his name because I'm not going to jinx it. But as long as that doesn't happen and the Chargers are going into this game at full strength, I think the Chargers have already shown that they can beat this Raiders team. And this Raiders team has shown even later on in the season that they're susceptible, and they got their asses beat by the Chiefs pretty much back to back, a couple of weeks ago. So, I mean, this team, although they are playing better football and they're playing inspired football for their interim head coach, this is a team that definitely can be beat, and the Chargers have already shown that they can do it.
Yeah, I mean, they've had such a weird season. Like the first time these 2 teams played, I mean, John Gruden was the coach, right? I mean, they had a
Yeah,
lot of different things happening,
that seems like
obviously.
forever ago.
Yeah, Henry Ruggs was still on the team, you know what I mean? So, like, it
Yeah.
is a different time of the season. I do think it'll be a different game that brings its own unique set of, difficult things that the Chargers will have to deal with. But at the same time, I mean, there's no reason the Chargers shouldn't go out and win. And I think that just
Yeah,
as we make it through the week, I mean, it'll always be more about the Chargers than the other team, but the Chargers with those pieces back should be able to go out there, get a win, make it into playoffs and see what happens, because that's really all you can ask for, especially with an incomplete team that's maybe a year ahead of schedule, in my opinion. Get there, see what happens, because I think they're also a team that a lot of teams don't want to play.
that's
And just
exactly
that,
what I was
yeah,
about to
and
say. I said, if there is one team that can make it into this playoff tournament in the AFC that absolutely no one wants to see, it's a Justin Herbert led Chargers team. I guarantee you,
yeah.
no one wants to see that guy in the playoffs.
Well, especially because there's a scenario where it ends up being the Chiefs, and like the Chiefs have already lost to the Chargers once and then won a game late in the game without Derwin James. So I don't think they want to see a
Yeah,
Chargers and a healthy Derwin James in the first round of the playoffs to try to, get back to the Super Bowl again for the third time in a row. I do not think they want to see that at all. Personally, I'd love to see it, just because
me too.
you're playing with house money at that point, anyways. Have a chance to take the Chiefs out of the
Let's
playoffs
see
and
what you
ruin it.
can do when Derwin James shuts Travis Kelce completely down.
Yeah,
Then let's
exactly.
see what happens.
Yeah, and I mean, the Chargers had a great effort, great energy in their last performance. You like the energy that they're bringing into this one, but obviously the last time they had good energy against the Chiefs as well, and then had a letdown the next week. So they have to keep that energy, and they do have some things that they need to clean up from that first
Yeah,
matchup that we have to get into. It was not perfect, and there's some things they're going to have to get done this week that you didn't last week if they want to get a win and get the playoff hopes that they have right in their vision, right where they can just go and grab it. But I do need to tell you guys about an app that you better make sure you have this point, because if not, it's pretty just, it's kind of dumb if you don't have money and you don't want to save gas, but save money on your gas, because I need to tell you guys about the Get Upside app, which is my new favorite app, because one of my least favorite things to do is to go pay for gas, especially with the gas prices in California. And Get Upside is an incredible app. Everyone who buys gas needs to know about it, because my listeners are making up to 25 cents for every gallon of gas every time they fill up. Just download the free Get Upside app in the App Store or Google Play Store right now. Use the promo code TOUCHDOWN and get a 25-cent bonus per gallon on your first fill up. That means you're saving up to 50 cents per gallon on your first fill up. You can take 50 cents off the outrageous number you see up there on the gas board. I mean, there's no downside to Get Upside. You're going to get gas anyways. Get the Get Upside app and start saving right now. And there's no catch to it either. You can get the money straight to your PayPal. You can get it right to your bank account. You can get it gift cards for Amazon and other big brands as well. And you can save, most importantly, up to 50 cents back on every gallon on your first fill up. And you use that promo code TOUCHDOWN. It's promo code TOUCHDOWN, all caps, one word, to start saving money when you get gas with the Get Upside app. All right, David. Well, now it's time to get into what went wrong this week, because obviously it was not a perfect game and it was very frustrating for a lot of it until the Chargers kind of finally pulled away. So when you're thinking about the bad from this one, things that have to get cleaned up going into week 18, where would you start?
Yeah, I think where my starting point here is with Joey Bosa back. I expected the Chargers to have a better pass rush, especially going up against the Denver Broncos offensive line that was much maligned. That were missing several pieces,
Yeah.
and missing several, their wide receivers as well. It was a very incomplete unit, and the Chargers were able to only muster 6 pressures on the game. That's just not enough. You get 2 from Joey, 1 from Derwin, 1 from Chenna, obviously the sack from Tillery, and then 1 from Jones, and that's just not enough. That's not going to cut it. I mean, I just expected them to be able to get pressure on a guy like Drew Lock, but that just didn't happen in this game. And going into the playoffs and going into this game against the Raiders, I think we saw in the first game how important it is to get pressure on the quarterback, and the Chargers just are not doing that at a good enough rate right now. That's something that has to get cleaned up going into this game.
Especially because they did force a fair amount of, third and longs and things like that. And I think in those gotta have it situations, they did get some pressure, but it has to be more consistent than that. I think it ended up being 7, because I think Nasir Adderley gets a pressure on Kendall Hinton because he's technically a quarterback on
Yeah,
that fourth down play. And we'll get to Nasir Adderley in the next segment. But
missile.
it wasn't enough. I mean, I did think they did a lot, as far as in the running game, that was a lot to like, tackles for loss and things like that. But just
Yeah,
overall pressure, I think you want it to be a little bit better, especially, at times you have packages out there of Uchenna Nwosu, Joey Bosa, Chris Rumpf, Jerry Tillery, right? NASCAR package, if you will, with
yeah,
those dudes out there. So I think you'd like to see more pressure, but I think that, I mean, for this game specifically, why you're so right about it is just because there's bad blood between these teams because of that first matchup with, what Joey Bosa said. Hey, we hit him a couple times. He
yeah.
gets a little shook, Derek Carr responds, and now you have another game where it's going to be important to shake him up because he will
Yep.
make some mistakes. So I do think that is something that has to get fixed this week, and it's something that we saw them get 20 plus pressures without Joey Bosa on the field, right? So
Yeah.
there's no
So we know
excuses there.
we know it's possible. Yeah.
For sure. And they got good pressure in the first matchup as well. But I mean, I have to go with Michael Davis for this one just because I thought he was kind of one sore spot for the defense on Sunday and a troubling trend that we touched on a little bit yesterday. But overall, 4 receptions allowed on 5 targets for 85 yards, a 21.3 average yards per reception, right? That's obviously not good. And passer rating allowed of 118.8, not getting his head around again, and receptions given up of 44 and 34. And I think the most frustrating thing is like on both plays, he had a chance to make a
Yeah,
play
he's in the
on the
area. He's in
football.
position to make a play, and he's not turning his head around to look for the football. And that's what's so frustrating with Michael Davis, Dan, because he has all the gifts and all the physical tools that you look for in a starting caliber corner in this league. He's got size, he's got length, he's got world-class 4.3 speed. Like, he has all of those tools. He has the intelligence now, and he has a track record where he's shown to be a very good corner when he is doing the things he needs to do and really being good with his technique. One of those techniques is obviously turning your head around and looking for the football. And he's in position, like he's around the football. He's just not doing that one crucial task. You can't look for the football. You can't make a play on the ball, and you're going to get called for penalties a lot more often than not.
Yeah. That's the other thing. Yeah. Is just the penalties that you could get. And we've seen it with him happen already this year. But I mean, that's just the funny thing is it's a lot harder to like be so in phase with the receiver that you're, step for step with them the entire way than it is to, get your head around and knock a ball away at the very least. Right. But it is 2 very, very separate skills. Right. And there's different parts of ball skills as well, because it's one thing to make a play on something happening in front of you, which he's pretty good at. If he's seeing it in front of him, has his eyes on the quarterback, he can make a break on the ball and break it up. And we've seen him do that. The Giants game was one of his best games. That was only a few weeks ago, right before he went on the COVID list. Yep. Maybe COVID is an issue, but the bigger thing is we've seen him have this in the past. And with Michael Davis, he's never been a top flight corner. Last year, he had his best season, right? Which gave you the incentive, hey, bring this dude back because he could be on the precipice of being really, really good. Mm-hmm. But if you start seeing regression like we've seen with Michael Davis, because we wanted Michael Davis borderline cut at a certain point just because there were so many opportunities with the ball in the air where he was just not coming through over and over again, and it was leading to big plays. So to see that team and Drew Lock, especially late in the game when the deep ball is coming, to have them complete passes of 44 and 34 just on Michael Davis alone, and especially because there's a missed tackle in there as well, and that never has been his strong suit.
Not to mention his ankles, and I hope that they're in good shape after they were absolutely broken in the Broncos game. It was ugly. He got turned around like a dreidel, like a top. It was ugly.
Yeah, he did have a nice hit on Drew Lock on when he scrambled to bring up a 4th down, I believe, early in the game. That was nice to see. Joey Bosa, I think, finished that one, but it's gotten better. His tackling has gotten better, but those angles and his ankles might have been broken in that game, and it has to be better from him because obviously if you're giving up big bombs and you're missing tackles, that's not a recipe for success. But I think, the other thing too for this game was the running game wasn't where I would like it to be, of course. I mean, if you take away the Herbert kneel downs, it's still not as bad, but it's still not good. I mean, 33 carries, 106 yards, 3.2 average. The biggest thing for me is taking negative plays. And I think that's so much worse, right? It's one thing to get 2 yards a clip every time in a pile of dust. It's another thing to take negative plays and get your offense off schedule. And in this one, the Charge had 6 rushes that went for either 0 or negative yards. And most of them were negative yards, -4, -3, -2. So I think that was one thing for me. And the biggest thing is Corey Linsley not being there. And we talked about it yesterday. Like, it seemed like kind of went away once Corey Linsley left. Got there, in that last drive, it wasn't terrible. But that was just something that concerned me from this game and something that can be better, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Corey Linsley is so impactful, and we
when
know
those 3 dudes, you know what I mean? It's the Linsley, Filer, Slater effect. Like, when those 3 guys are out there, it's dominant.
Yeah. When the left side law order is out there, they definitely are smashing dudes left and right. They're phenomenal. And when one of those guys goes out, it's a noticeable difference. And except for Trey Pipkins filling in at left tackle for Rashawn Slater, got to give that dude his credit. And I'm sure we'll get into him in the next segment again. I mean, wow, what a turnaround for him, and to the coaching staff too. You have to give them credit for what they've done with him. But yes, it's crucially important for those guys to be out there for the Chargers to run the football the way they are capable of doing. And I think we've seen some good run concepts, and we've seen some great running game this year with some of the things that they've done. As opposed to years past. I think the last thing for me is just something we touched on a little bit in the last show was that end of half operation. We've seen too many times this season where the Chargers would either mess up an opportunity to score at the end of half or give their opponent an opportunity to score or double dip. And that was this situation here. The Broncos were getting the ball back after halftime. They go down the field in no time, like absolutely no time flat. You don't kick it, short to make them burn clock. So all they have to do is dink and dunk their way to get in position to give their chance to a kicker who has one of the strongest legs in the league. And, he makes the field goal. It's just, obviously we're nitpicking here, but that's just something that you can't have. You just can't have those lapses at the end of halftime, Daniel. You have to be sharp and finish that strong.
Especially when you had such a nice touchdown drive to leave 14 seconds left on the clock. And I mean, like I said yesterday, I think Brandon Staley could have managed that a little bit better. I do think you kick off. Yeah, you're giving up a chance for a kickoff return for a touchdown, but your actually kickoff unit has been a strong point for you, especially lately. So the last thing I'll touch on too is just something that always frustrates me, and that is you had two different drives where you made it inside the 1 yard line, and both of those drives separately ended in 0 points. That could be the difference in one of these games. I think if it is one of these games, Brandon Staley's probably going for it, especially with the stakes being as high as they are. I don't think he's going to leave that to chance. And I think he has more respect for the Raiders offense than he does for the Broncos offense. But that's just, even if you win, even if you blow them out like the Chargers do, I mean, that's stuff that has to be cut out. And you have a couple of, early series where you go 2 back-to-back 3-and-outs after an opening touchdown drive. Just stuff like that. The play calling, running the ball on 3rd and 2 in the shadow of your own end zone.
Didn't like that at all.
Me neither. I mean, there's nitpicky stuff, but there's also a lot of really good stuff as well, especially with the Chargers scoring that late touchdown in the half. That was great. That totally changed the game. And also, the Chargers scored on, their last 5 possessions, or at least their last 4, until they ended with a kneel down, which obviously that's just as good as a scoring drive. So we're going to get into what the rest of what went right for the Chargers, because there was also a lot of things to highlight. So as much as this segment is meant to be negative in a certain way, and the Chargers do need to be held to a high standard and clean these things up, there was much, much more positive things to talk about than there were negative things. So we're going to get into that. But I do need to tell you guys about the official betting sponsor of the Locked On Chargers podcast, and that's betonline.ag. BetOnline has you guys covered this holiday season with more odds, props, and lines than ever before as football continues its march towards the playoffs. And, you have the national championship game in college football coming up as well. So BetOnline is your number one place for all college and professional football action. And right now, just a great time to bet on sports anyways, because you also have the NHL going on. You have the NBA going on. You can bet on UFC with some big cards coming up, and you can even save some money and have some free money to play with, because if you head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today, you can receive a 50% welcome bonus with the promo code Locked On. It's promo code Locked On, all caps, one word, and you'll get 50% welcome bonus. That's free money to play with. That's the best kind of money to play with, is when it's free. And with BetOnline, you can go in, you can make your own props for players and things like that, which is something you're not going to find anywhere else. And there's so many good things coming up for the playoffs in the NFL specifically that I know I'm going to be betting on, especially with the Chargers as well. But from basketball, football, NHL, boxing to UFC, even to your favorite Vegas casino games, BetOnline is the one place that you want to go, because BetOnline is where the game starts. All right, David, well, it's now time to talk about a more positive point here. And I feel like it's right to start this by talking about the special teams in this game, just because
the first thing you saw.
Point, yeah, exactly. There was a point this season, where we were saying things like, I'll take average. I'll take 20th in the NFL. I'll take 22nd in the NFL, because it's better than historically bad 32nd in the NFL, where you're getting compared to teams from 20 years ago because your special teams unit is so bad. And it was so all-encompassing, too. Was the kicking game was bad. The return units were bad. The coverage units were bad. Everything was bad. And then you see this game, which is just a chef's kiss of a game from a special teams standpoint. And obviously, Andre Roberts, we talked about yesterday, right? How good of a game he had, and he deserved it. I mean, returns of 47 yards and a 101-yard touchdown return. But that wasn't everything, David. You get a turnover with a very heads-up play by Keeman Hall on a muffed punt, and how many times have we seen those muffed punts and things like that end up in the other team's hands?
Yeah.
That's something that you have to be able to do, is that awareness. They had it on that one. Dustin Hopkins goes 2 of 2 on field goals and 4 of 4 on extra points. We were holding our breath with Tristan Vizcaino extra points, right? And now I think we take for granted how good Dustin Hopkins is there. And then 2 punts that were returned, you hold Deontay Spencer to 4 yards, an average of 2 yards per punt return. So to see such a complete special teams performance like this from the places they've been to the place they are now, Darius Swinton deserves a ton of credit. Dustin Hopkins, Andre Roberts, a ton of credit. But that was just so great to see.
Yeah, and I think it's just one of those things where if one part of the unit is shining and playing well, I think that rubs off of onto the other units, onto the kick return. The kick return is doing well. I think that goes into the coverage, which goes into the punt and the punt coverage. I think that all just carries over and spills over. And, we really saw that in this game. Every facet was looking great. And I think for Justin Hopkins, I think when he kicks the ball, that's what it's supposed to look like. When you see it come off his foot, and just the angle and
not a lot of close calls,
how it strikes. Yeah, it just like that's you can tell this guy is a professional kicker. That's what you're used to seeing, and that's how it's supposed to look. For me, I think I go to the offensive line. I think the offensive line played extremely well in this game, and they only gave up 2 pressures.
I was going to say, especially pass blocking. I mean, the run blocking, there's some criticism there, but pass blocking, because how many pressures did Trey Pipkins give up?
0. I'm going to say that again. 0 pressures given up for Trey Pipkins, who found out probably a day or so before this game that he was going to start at right tackle in place of Storm Norton, who did get activated off the COVID list, but he just wasn't feeling 100% ready to go yet. So Trey Pipkins steps in, plays extremely well, does some great things as a run blocker. I think this right here, Trey Pipkins, is the greatest example of development that the Chargers coaching staff can put and show on tape and say, hey, before we got here, this guy was on the brink of getting cut from the team because he really was a worthless player. I think we can say that quite comfortably. But now you stick him in and you actually have confidence that he's going to be able to go out there and do his job at almost a high level. So the coaching staff deserves a lot of credit. Trey Pipkins deserves a lot of credit. That unit, I mean, you just got to be really excited for what you've seen from those guys and just from several other parts of the team as well. They're actually getting these guys better than where they were before.
Yeah, I mean, Trey Pipkins now has people talking about, hey, right tackle is not a need next year. You know what I mean? And I'm not going to go that far.
Definitely not going that far.
Either way, I mean, he's a usable piece. Like,
Yeah.
he's, average player. Like, these are things I didn't know if we'd ever say about Trey Pipkins, because before it was all tools and zero production from it, just to be honest. But I think one of the things that scared us the most, and I talked about this in the LA Football Network earlier, is just that the preseason was the worst that he's looked against second and third string guys. Yeah. He was looking as bad as we'd ever seen.
Fourth and fifth string guys. Yeah,
exactly. So like that was scary. But the one thing I thought about is like, there's a good chance that this coaching staff just came in and said, forget everything you've learned. You know what I mean? Like, let's break this down to the core and build it back up again, which would make sense if they're trying to teach their fundamentals and their techniques, right, for how they want their offensive line to play.
Well, and now they have some dudes that you can be like, hey, you see how that guy's doing it? That's what it's supposed to look like.
It helps so much to be surrounded by better players, and I think that's hurt so many Chargers players in the past, is like, you're not only have you not played well, but you're surrounded by guys who haven't played well too. And that is such a, give and take relationship with the offensive line. But their pass protection was great in this game. I mean, Justin Herbert had a ton of time to throw, helped set up the long bomb at the end, helped set up the Keenan Allen touchdown pass. I mean, they were just really good. I mean, I think Justin Herbert maybe got hit one time in that game that I can remember.
Yeah, so I believe one hit, and I think that was from Steven Anderson, actually. So
yeah, so I mean, great by the Chargers offensive line. Justin Herbert, obviously, it's great that he passed the record. We talked about that a little bit yesterday. The offense, I thought, just had a fine day, but I do think there's definitely some names we have to shout out on the defensive side, including Nasir Adderley. And I mean, that's also another reason why I don't fully trust PFF, because I mean, they had him as one of his worst games of the season in this one grade-wise. But I thought Nasir Adderley was very refreshing to watch in this game, especially blowing up that fourth down play, David, and just being super, super physical in that game the whole time he was making big tackles, 8 total tackles, 5 solo, 3 assists. So Nasir Adderley 100% deserves a shout out in this game because he was everything you wanted him to be, really, except for, taking the football away.
Well, it's just another guy that you're just like, dude, this guy has a lot of talent, has a lot of skills. And the Chargers they drafted him high. They drafted him in the second round to be that guy. And I think we're just now seeing the Nasir Adderley that we all thought that we could possibly see in a Chargers uniform this year. Brandon Staley, that defensive coaching staff, really getting the best. And I think they've really unlocked that aggression that Nasir Adderley possesses. We always knew about the physical gifts. I mean, the guy has great vision. He has good speed. He's really putting that together right now. So, yes, this is one situation where PFF grades are completely arbitrary, and we can throw that out the window. Trust your eyes. Trust what you've seen from Nasir Adderley this year, and what you've seen is explosive play from the defensive side at the safety position. So, got to give a lot of credit to Nas as well. He looked really good in this game. Also, hey, we got to talk about them stopping the run. They stopped 2 of the best running backs in the NFL, especially 2 running backs that ran rampant, ran wild on you in the first game. They did a great job of bottling those guys up. Melvin Gordon, 10 for 43, 4.3 yards per carry. Javonte Williams, 14 for 30, only a 2.14 yard per carry average. And altogether, 27 carries, 83 yards. That's only a little over 3 yards a carry. Whenever you're bottling up that running game to that extent, that is nothing more than a win.
I especially loved the way that they played down near the goal line too, and that's something
Oh,
Brandon Staley
yes.
talked about. But like them even getting that to a fourth down, right, where they end up getting that play from Nasir Adderley and Joey Bosa, who needs a big shout out on that play as well, not
Yeah.
quitting on the play, destroying Drew Lock on the 1 yard line to save a touchdown. But that's the other reason you can't, look at PFF always too, because I mean they had Justin Jones having one of the worst games on the team as well, and I mean that dude made such a big difference in the running defense, the run defense this week. I mean, especially his play on the goal line, getting in the backfield, meeting the quarter, the running back behind the line of scrimmage, especially down there, is huge. And Chargers overall 5 tackles for loss in this game. And they did a great job, and he makes a big difference. And the Chargers are such a better defense when they're stopping the run like this. And they're going up
Absolutely.
against a team that, I think had 12 carries for 48 yards or 47 yards the first time these two teams matched up. It was not a good game, but Derwin James, as always, deserves a shout out just because he's a great player. Allowed 2 receptions on 3 targets for 1 yard. So that means
And dropped 2 interceptions too.
he did drop 2 interceptions. That he should have been in the what went wrong column for. But he just makes such a difference, and this defense just looks totally different with him out there. He had,
Well, it's that energy, it's that passion. I mean, he brings that, that alpha dog mentality, and he rubs off on everyone else around him. He's just that guy that makes everyone around him better. That's who he is. That's who Joey Bosa is. I think that's who Justin Jones is on the interior of the defensive line too. I just think those guys, they play the game the right way, and that rubs off on everyone around them, which has a great effect on this Chargers defense.
Yeah, it's just funny that Derwin James allowed 0.33 yards per target, 0.5 yards.
It's very fitting that it's 0.33.
Yeah, 0.33 yards per target,
For number
0.5 yards
33.
per reception. I mean, dude is just a freak. But
He's
the other
unreal.
thing, I think the one kind of main big thing that went right for the Chargers is just the fact that you went in and you took care of business in a game that you had to have.
Yeah.
You had a total bummer letdown game against the Houston Texans, and
You
you
made
come
me
back.
sit through that in the stadium.
I know I wasn't going to bring that up. It's so terrible that that's the one game you got to go to. But I mean that's rough. But I just love the way that the Chargers finish this game too. I mean, you score on your you score on your final 4 drives leading up to the last drive where your offense was still on the field. Didn't agree with that. But you end the game with the ball in your hands too. I mean, you go get a couple first downs, you throw it a couple of times just to make sure nothing crazy is going to happen. You don't want to see you go through onside kicks and all these things. You go out there and you end up just kind of shoving it down their throat for the win. But they scored every drive in the second half leading up to that, right? You ended the first half with a touchdown drive like they did. That's just really all you can ask for. But taking care of business in a big game like this that you just had to have, no matter who was lining up on the other side. I mean, we found out last week, it does not matter who you beat. But when you have a must-win game, you bring that kind of energy. You have a well thought out game plan on both sides of the football. You have a great game plan drawn up for the special teams. I mean, you deserve a hat tip for that, because the Chargers went out and did exactly what they had to do against a bad team that they absolutely should have beat, not just this last time, but the first time these two teams played against each other as well. But I'm excited to get with Daniel Popper and talk to him about some of that stuff, especially Justin Jones, because that's a dude. He called it before the season and has been kind of expecting big things from this dude. Like, where is he now on the Chargers list of people to re-sign? I'd love to know what Daniel Popper has to think about that. So make sure you guys are back here tomorrow for that show when we get Daniel Popper for the first time on YouTube. He's going to go on video with us and make our faces look worse by comparison. But if you guys don't want to miss that, make sure to subscribe to the new Locked On Chargers YouTube channel. You can listen to it as well on any platform, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You can find the show wherever you get your podcast from, and make sure to rate and review there as well. We're super excited to have Popper on, but to make sure you guys don't miss it as well, you can find it on all of our social media. You can find it on our Twitter at Locked On LAC, our Instagram at Locked On Chargers, and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. You can find me on Twitter at Dan Talk Sports and David Droegemeier on Twitter at Dro Talk SD. But if you guys want to get your reactions into your previews then for this game, the number for the Locked On Chargers voicemail line is 323-524-7924. I don't know if we'll get to voicemails this week, but I'm sure you guys are going to have some reactions after this game coming up, so make sure you guys hit that up if you want to. But so much excitement this week. Can't wait to talk with Daniel Popper tomorrow from The Athletic about this playoff matchup basically coming up against the Raiders, winner take all, and we'll be here with you guys all week. But until then, take it easy and go Bolts.